I'm ready and I'm excited for Big Money Charleston. And I'm more excited for Charleston to dream big. And, the impact that we have there, we're going to scrape the surface. We won't meet everyone, but we will meet a lot of people down in Charleston. And I'm excited for the people that we do meet down in Charleston, the impact that that's going to drive and allow them to dream bigger, think bigger as they go into retirement. Because at the end of the day, big money means big dreams. And we don't believe that you're ever too old to dream. You're going into retirement. They should be your brightest and best years. It shouldn't be, oh, we're scared to death to spend our money. You should sit with someone who enables you. And I'm just excited for all those great conversations that are going to happen on Meeting Street. That is where we are. So, excited to share more about that. Welcome to the show. This is the Build Big, Live Bigger podcast. This is where you get real clarity about retirement so you can build a plan that blesses your life instead of becoming it. We'll share what you need to hear to replace worry with confidence, protect what you've built, and actually live your dreams, not your fears in retirement. Let's dive in. Hello, welcome to episode 10 of the Build Big, Live Bigger podcast. My name is Jonathan Burgess. I'm joined by Chris Kyle, the American sniper. That's what we're going to call the Charleston office. So it's actually Chris Franklin and Kyle Connor. So they're our advisors for the new Charleston location. So that's exciting. We're going to talk over that in that episode. But I would like for each of you to give a little bit of your background. And how did you guys come to know Big Money? And really excited to get going down there in Charleston. So we'll start with the younger of the two of you. So we'll start with Kyle. Kyle, if you just want to give us a little bit of your background, where you came from, why were you attracted to the firm, etc.
Certainly. So my name is Kyle Connor, and I originally was from Atlanta, Georgia. Grew up there all my life. If anyone's familiar with Georgia, I grew up on the south end of Lake Lanier. Right after college, I got into the insurance industry. Funny little story, my mom, she was a real estate agent. My dad's a mortgage broker. And I had a best friend that started a property casualty firm. And so it's only natural that I was doing the home insurance and my mom was doing the real estate. My dad was doing the mortgage. And I worked there for a couple of years. But during that time when I was working there is when I met my wife, Molly. And she actually was doing her master's up at Western North Carolina. And she got a job opportunity to move down to Charleston, South Carolina. And of course, Charleston, as beautiful as it is, there was no way I was going to say no to move it down to the low country. So we made the move down there. And at the time, farmers, they weren't registered to sell home insurance in South Carolina. The flood insurance is just crazy. And from there, I transitioned into life insurance. So at that point, I started working at New York Life. It was a great job, but, we were just doing a whole bunch of whole life and term. I really wanted to find something bigger and better than just being a whole life insurance guy. And I ended up moving over to a family office. So probably about 2022, I moved on to Daniel Island. If anyone's familiar with Charleston, South Carolina, it's the north end of Charleston. And there, I really, really expanded my knowledge there. We are kind of a holistic financial planning firm. And it was a good firm. There was a couple things that I did not like too much about it. Which is one of the reasons why, attracted me to Big Money so much. But through my tenure there, towards the end of it, I really got into trading. In October of 2024, I took the leap into becoming a full-time day trader. I was strictly trading futures. So from October of 2024 until I met Jonathan, I was, strictly trading S&P and NASDAQ futures. I was pretty much stuck in this room in a silo, staring at my screen all day long. And I almost lost my purpose during that time when it was just me and the computer without that human interaction that I had prior of being able to really just walk that retiree down the path of, hey, you were working, but now we're entering a different stage of your life where it's really all about you being able to build that dream of what you want to go out and accomplish. That was something that I lost during that time. And it was kind of ironic and funny how it happened. I was on LinkedIn one day and I got a message from a recruiter and they're like, hey, I think there's a really good opportunity for you. Do you mind hopping on a call? And she didn't tell me anything about what the job opportunity was. But through the call, she was explaining to me, there's a guy named Jonathan and he has a firm up in Greenville and he's starting something down here in Charleston. I think it would be really good for y'all to meet. And I hopped on the call with Jonathan, and I have to say, his energy, you could just feel it coming through the phone. And I knew that when I met Jonathan and I was hearing his energy, felt like our energy was matching, and everything that he was saying, that, hey, my whole goal here at Big Money Retirement Solutions is just providing, clients that clarity and confidence of being able to go out, spend their money with confidence, go out, take that dream vacation, go down to the Disney World if that's really what you want to do. And that was just something that I knew that I was missing. And one thing led to the next, went up to the Greenville office, met the team, loved everybody on the team. I mean, everyone's so unique in their own way. And, I really felt like it was a great calling. And now I'm on a podcast.
Yeah. So we're happy to have you in. It's so funny, as you and Chris were both going through the interview process, we get to the end, and I told Amy, because we were only going to hire one advisor. I think I told both of y'all that. We got to the end, and I was like, I like both of them so much. Like, I feel like both of them would really excel in the model. So, we took the leap, we went all in, and lo and behold, we got two of y'all on the podcast today. So excited to talk about Charleston and everything we're going to do down there. But Chris, give us a little bit of your background. So, where do you come from? You're a 7 Enneagram. So if anybody's listening to this and you don't know what an Enneagram is, Chris and I are enthusiastic visionaries at heart. Kyle's a 1. He's a strict perfectionist. So we're totally different people. But Chris and I share a lot of, I guess, subconscious similarities. But yeah, give us a little bit of your background, where you're from, and how did you end up here?
I'll say a few things first, but I appreciate the podcast and the framing of video, because everything looks clean and tidy. If you were to zoom out, you'd see the chaos of a 7. I've got a long backstory, so I'm going to keep it to the elevator pitch. But for all of us here in Charleston, we know that we have short buildings. We can't build taller than the steeples. So I'm going to take us to a Chicago tower, and I'll do a little bit of an elevator, at least in a 40-story floor in Chicago. So I got a long backstory, but the gist of it is born and bred Phoenix, both my wife and I, and 4 kids from the desert back in Phoenix. And the big question is, what do you do with the desert? You just build. You just build as far as the eye can see. So I grew up in real estate. All my family are residential real estate, but even myself said I wanted to be the black sheep, get out of residential. So I did commercial real estate ever since coming out of college. Loved it. Loved the investment mindset. I love those who are investing in commercial, are forward thinking about not only just the property, but about what the return is and how does that work out, not just in 1 year, but in 5 years, 10 years. Real estate, you're always thinking many years down the road. And so my love for investments and real estate is really what I was born and bred into. But take us back in time, what happened in 2008? And there was a small collapse. If you remember any of that, just a little blip in the market happened in real estate. And so after the 2000 blip, 2008, the question is, what do you do with your time? I was still working, but thankfully I had a job through it. But you got to fill your time. There's not a lot of transactions happening. So I sidestepped into some nonprofit, some mentoring, some counseling. I really have a love for people and helping people out. So I love that nonprofit space. In that, I had an opportunity. Thankfully, my wife was on board, but an opportunity to jump overseas. And we packed up, and about as far as you can get from the desert, we went to cold and wet Scotland. So we love Scotland. And for those who I get to meet in the future, I'll tell you all about it. It is everything you see in the movie Braveheart. It's beautiful. It's waterfalls, but it's very, very poor. And so there's a lot I can say about that, but we moved over there for the specific reason of helping people step out of poverty and kind of build back into their future, the dreams that they'd hoped for, how economics play a big part of that, how money mindset makes a big part of that. There's a lot more to the story, so much so that I jumped from Scotland back to Phoenix, back to Scotland again. Thank you, kids, for following me, because towing 4 kids overseas is not so much fun. So much so that I could tell you some wild stories. Taking 4 toddlers on an international flight from London to Phoenix. God bless my wife. She's a saint. So we did all of those big moves back and forth. And I kept getting pulled back to Scotland because I love the idea of building something and specifically helping people. But I'll tell you, Jonathan, there's something that I realized while I was over there in Scotland, that poverty is a mindset and not so much of just an economic. and that there was a lot of people who the poverty in their pocketbook was tied to fears of the future. They didn't know what was happening, so they just kind of retreated back. The interesting thing about my backstory is that when I jumped back to Phoenix, I always ran in wealthier circles, whether it was commercial real estate or investments. Started my financial advisory journey over there in Phoenix. And so working in those higher net worth households, there's a connection between people who are scared of what happens next. I ran in circles with people who had millions in their 401ks and still couldn't see what tomorrow was going to be. They were scared of what was going to happen when they retired. I had people with more money they knew what to do with, and they were scared to go out and take a vacation. They said they wanted to hunker down and still drive their Honda Civic because they were too worried about what it was going to mean to actually step into the future and step into that financial freedom that comes with the hard work that they'd had. So after that last move of coming back to Scotland, from Scotland, there's a slight side story there because we promised our kids it'd be the last move. So my wife and I looked at each other in the eye and had a heart to heart. Are we moving back to the desert? God knows nobody wants to go back to the desert. So we said, if not Phoenix, then where? Where better than Charleston? So we landed in Charleston. It's been incredible. I've had a few years of just getting back into the industry, having to come back out of the nonprofit space, back into the for-profit space. And after a few years, after working with an incredible firm here in Charleston, they were a great training ground for me. But I'll specifically say that I moved because their client, their type of client was a little bit different than my passion. My passion is helping people step into retirement, whether that is those with just a few dollars in their 401k or enough to live comfortably on, but not necessarily out sailing the yachts, if you know what I mean. Shem Creek here in Charleston has some incredible boats pull in, and if you're lucky enough to have one, come invite me on it. I'll come jump on your boat with you. But the main people I love to work with are those who have worked hard through their career and now have their sights on retirement and just have that question of, what do I do now? So that phone call that lined up, I will say shout out to Sarah. Kyle mentioned her. There are a lot of recruiters out there who you bat those away like a beach volleyball. You just hit them and knock them back as far as possible. But Sarah knew Jonathan, and she spoke highly, said, you got to meet this guy. I said, well, if you say so, I'm going to meet this guy. And sure enough, Jonathan, after getting to meet you, same as Kyle, I think we were jiving together. You know, it wasn't quite a date night out, but if it was a date night, I think we'd be going on for the second date. There's some sparks in the air. We were loving it. So, Jonathan, that was the start of our story. And then just as Jonathan said, he said, you know, if we're just hiring one in Charleston, just hiring one. Chris, can you work on your own? I said, sure. You know, I've done that. But so I prefer to work in partnership. You know, once it grows, it grows. And after we moved forward, he said, well, you know what? We decided we're going to do two. I said, even better. Even better. There's always collaboration and partnership together. So can't speak high enough of Kyle and what we're going to do here in Charleston. So thank you.
Yeah, for both of y'all, you know, that's a big step for us. We're going into a totally different markets, 3 hours away. You know, what excites you guys about Charleston and being a part of the big money movement down to Charleston?
Man, I mean, I'll just touch on something that Chris said when he was kind of giving that elevator pitch there. You know, he was working with those people that had, you know, maybe $1 million plus in their 401k there. And, you know, they were just so scared to be able to go out and actually spend that little bit of money or the money that they did have there. And how satisfying is it to be able to build a beautiful plan that shows, hey, here we are throughout the rest of your life. We're able to go out. We could take those distributions. You can go out, you can go buy that boat or even join a boat club, do whatever you want to do. And they can do it with confidence, right? You know, being able to make that mindset shift of, hey, you know, we've been penny savers our whole entire life, and this is how we've accumulated the, you know, amazing net worth that we have now. But now it's time to enjoy us, right? Let's put our time first as a client and being able to really go out and explore the many beautiful things that Charleston has. Like you were saying, Shem Creek, there are some amazing boats out there. And being able to go out, maybe join a boat club and being able to go see a different perspective of Charleston that you've never been able to see yet. And just giving our clients that, you know, that clarity and confidence to be able to go out and do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks. I'll add to that as well, is that there's two specific things I love about Charleston. One is that growing up in Phoenix, we were a transplant state. You know, everything was in Phoenix was in transition my whole life growing up. You know, there was never not a street construction going on, never not a new freeway being built. And so that was my life growing up, of getting to know people. Californians, God love them, but people from Texas and from Iowa and every which way, Chicago coming across. across. The Cubs have their summer league over there. And so loved the whole transplant mentality. Charleston is that now. There are people, my entire street, I live in a new build neighborhood here in Mount Pleasant, and my entire street, we do block parties and casino nights and great things on our street. But it's Ohio, Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey, and across the Western Seaboard that everybody has transplanted in. I love that new mentality. But true to you Charlestonians, you're also deep in history. There are some people who have been here for generations, and Arizona, I believe this, it was a historic neighborhood if it was built older than 1960. So we can all laugh at that, about how ridiculous that is. So moving from Arizona to Scotland, everything you believe about Scotland, the kilts, the clans, the generations of culture, it was rich. And as someone moving in, you have to take that humble seat to say, I'm not from here, but I want to learn from you. And I want to hear about your culture. I want to know what's important to you. There was always the jokes of the Americans who came over who were brass and who were just proud to be American. God bless America. But when you move to a new culture, you learn. You sit and hear what's important to people. And so coming to Charleston, there's some rich, rich history here. Kyle, you mentioned P&C, property and casualty. Sit with people who have been here in 1989 for Hugo that came through. That is a wild story to listen about a hurricane wiping out the entire Isle of Palms. And so I love Charleston and the rich history that it brings. I drink from a deep textbook. My wife gave me this textbook. It's called Southern Charm. So we've watched all the seasons of Southern Charm, know all the history of Charleston, but really just the idea. I love both migration and rich culture. And so Charleston has both. It's a beautiful place.
A little bit about me. I went to Georgia State, so I was living right in the heart of Atlanta. I was living right in Midtown. And I was living in one of those big high rises. And, one day you're looking out and you're seeing beautiful Piedmont Park. But then maybe 5 years later, there's going to be another high rise that gets built up. And now that beautiful view that you had is now gone. And like Chris touched on earlier, our air rights here in Charleston, we have a steeple downtown. And like you said, nothing can be built higher than that steeple there. So that just brings the history of all those buildings that were built way back when, and being able to go downtown and go to beautiful places like the Vindu and go on the rooftop, which, the rooftop is only 4 stories high. But, you will never lose the beautiful sight that you have there. It's something that's just so special that many other cities do not have.
I actually did not know that. I would say one of my number one things I'm excited about is the food, moving down there for 3 months. So I'm excited to jump in. I'm a foodie at heart, and there's so many, anytime I go to a city, I've had clients ask me like, Jonathan, because I travel a fair amount. So, they're like, how do you pick like where to go and stuff like that? I'm like, I go on Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives and type in the name of the city. I'm like, okay, where has Guy Fieri been in Charleston? And there's a ton of places, and it's like that for every major city. But I'm excited to jump into the food down there now. Now, it may not be very conducive of my caloric intake restrictions that I have right now. 1,800 calories a day. I could probably only have one thing of shrimp and grits. So
I got a quick solution for that. And so this is an invite, but also a challenge podcast. You've all heard it here, so come back and ask. But in May, we have the Ravenel Bridge Run. So, Jonathan, I'm inviting you to that, challenging you to that. And so we're going to do the Ravenel Bridge Run in May. So, all that caloric intake, just burn it off running over the Ravenel.
Wait, how long is that, though?
Oh, goodness. I should know it because it's over the bridge, but then downtown. I've done it the past 2 years. I kind of probably blackballed.
I'm pretty sure it's just a 5K.
It's just a 5K? Oh.
Yeah. It's a beautiful run, though. I mean, you start in Mount Pleasant, you end up downtown, right around all that food scene, so you can, fill your stomach up after losing all the calories. Beautiful thing.
Yeah. So both of you have now, Kyle, you've had 2 weeks. Chris, this is your first week. So we're throwing you in the fire immediately. So since you've been here, you've been sitting in on meetings, current clients, new folks coming to meet us for the first time. What's been you guys' biggest aha moment since making the shift to big money? What's one thing that you've seen that you're like, wow, I haven't seen that before?
I'll jump out and it's not that I haven't seen it before, but I haven't seen it emphasized to the degree that it is here, which is special for me. But there's a lot you can do and help clients with, but in the meetings I've been with so far, there's been kind of one pressing goal for the clients and the advisors in mind. It's giving the greatest confidence and clarity for the client of knowing their retirement future. That's always on the mind of the advisor. It's always in the language of the meetings of how do I create clarity and confidence with this client to let them know that we're here to help, but to ultimately help them see their future, understand their future, and get excited about their future. And I don't know about you, Kyle, but we've all been sitting in on the advisors' calls, and I get that from each advisor here as they're meeting with their clients, that one goal is in mind. And so for me, that really resonates because it was always my passion, whether I was jumping in a low income or high income, but it's that excitement, when you can partner with a person, not just a client, but a person, and get them excited about their future. That's fun. You can have a lot of fun together, even have some parties together. I can keep rambling on, but big money likes to have parties, and you should have parties because retirement and life and money is fun. And so I'm having fun here, hearing all the stories about really connecting with the clients, the people, to get excited about the future.
Yeah. What he's talking about there, just for a little bit of color, is we do wine and wisdom events every 2 months where we invite, all of our clients out. It's funny when we started doing these, there were, I don't know, maybe 50 or 60 that would attend. And now if we have 200 to 250 come, and we have 200 on the wait list. So it's become like a thing where we basically have to be as democrat or as we have to be careful whenever we let people come to these because there is limited capacity. So we're like having to share the invites across all the new clients. And so we're going to eventually, I think, have to rent out the Bon Secours Wellness Arena to get all of our clients in one, because we normally have 200 clients on a wait list whenever we do this. But it goes beyond the money. And I think that's one thing that I've always thought about is, other than your faith in your family, your finances are the closest that you'll ever get to a person. So I think creating that relationship outside of the office is so important, and something that we don't have to invest in. And no one really does. I don't know of anyone in our area who does it. And I am excited to start doing these down in Charleston, but getting the clients out and about, we seat them with clients who we think will be like them. So we're automatically trying to create the synergy between the clients. And we've found that a lot of clients have actually created friendships outside of, the events. And I'm like, hey, how are y'all doing? They're like, yeah, we went to dinner with Robert and Christine the other night, or, we've been hanging out with XYZ client. And I just think that that's so cool. And the thing, if you heard it yesterday in the client review that both of you guys were on, they said, we think it's so interesting that you're willing to get all of your clients together, because what an opportunity to spread gossip. And I was like, I've never thought about it that way. And I think it's because we do truly go above and beyond for each one. And no matter if they had, 10 million or $100,000, like, we treat everybody the same. So the fact that we'll, get everyone together where negative things could be said, but the thing that the client said yesterday, Kurt and Sue that came in, they said, Jonathan, we have never heard anything negative at any of these events. Like, it's literally like you have raving fans across every table we go to. Everyone's talking good. So I love Wine and Wisdoms. It's probably one of my favorite things that we do. And down in Charleston, if we've got our first 10, 20, 30 clients, we're going to be doing them every 2 months the same way.
If retirement clarity matters to you, don't wait. Text BOOK to 864-920-3155 or click the link in the description below to get a free copy of Jonathan's book, Retire Right.
Sitting through my first 2 weeks, right, sitting in all the different advisory meetings and listening to all the clients, just like Chris was saying, giving clients the clarity and confidence to go out and build the dream retirement they want. But, I've heard Jonathan say a lot, it takes a village, right? I mean, we've seen that side of it, but the side that clients don't really see is behind the scenes. I mean, the Wine of Wisdom, he shout out Lindsay and Mari, right? Putting on that wedding every 2 months, being able to make sure that they really understand the clients and making sure that they sit with the right clients that they'll be able to connect with, that they can create, lifelong friendships from, maybe a client event through a retirement. Now, on the other side of things, we have Mael and AP, the parent planners on team, they are so good at what they do, being able to assist the advisors, where we have Elizabeth and Nancy, right? It just takes a village to be able to provide that excellent service or that white glove service to our clients. And that's something that a lot of the clients don't really see, because all they're seeing is we're talking to the advisor, but there's a whole team behind the advisor that really does put their great foot forward and, is able to make sure that, the client is able to live that dream retirement.
Love that. So question, first wine and wisdom, are we doing a boat or are we doing a rooftop? Which one are we picking?
The Palmetto Sunset pontoon off of Shem is class act. So that might be one. Whether it's the first one or not, I'm going to vote to be one. So what about you, Kyle? What do you think?
I was going to say the Yorktown, the USS Yorktown. That's a beautiful place. You can get up there on the flight deck, and that's high aspirations, but that'd be a really cool spot to do it at.
But if we do the same thing that we've done here, we always try to find unique experiences, maybe that the clients wouldn't know about. That's always our goal. So it's like, okay, what is a hidden gem in Greenville that not a lot of people know about? And we want people to pull up and say, I've never been here before. I never knew this was here. This is and mix that at the end with, everyone's leaving at the end of the night. They're like, this is amazing. So yeah, that's my goal there. So we're doing either way, it sounds like we're doing a water activity.
That's a shout for the Yorktown. That's what you can't miss the carrier when you're coming through Charleston, but it's not until you actually get underneath it and you hear people clinking glasses and laughing. There's people on that boat and they're having a great time. You're like, I want to be on that boat. So Jonathan, that's going to be us. We're going to be the envy of the people listening to all the laughter and fun and clinking of glasses coming off the carrier ship. So,
yeah. So Kyle, I do have a question for you. Whenever you think about day trading, which is totally different than our philosophy, right, around investing, what are some things that maybe some similarities, but also some things that are very dissimilar as you think about a retiree that's going into retirement, and let's say, maybe they do have that level of risk that they're like, day trading is something that I want to do. How do you compare day trading to what we do here?
I mean, the number one thing that sticks out is risk management, right? I mean, risk management is such a huge part of what I did in my previous passion, where, you had to be really mindset on, hey, how much are we able to spend on each trade? How many trades can we take per day without, over trading? And that's the same thing where it carries through for retirees, right? We want to make sure that, yes, when you were working, we were pretty aggressive in our 401k. We're a little bit more in the Mag 7, right? But as we dial it back down when we're in retirement, we want to make sure that we keep a portion of those funds safe. And that's where that discipline, which is another big thing that was in trading, the discipline and risk management, it really carries through for the retiree, just making sure that their portfolio is set up in a way that, we can weather the storms. If, God forbid, we do see a 2008 or 2022 again, that we can weather those storms. I don't suggest day trading in a retiree's portfolio. I'll just say that right now. I think that's...
Side note, for those of you that don't know, he said Mag 7. So eventually we'll get him on the right path with plain language. But Mag 7 is the Magnificent 7, which is the top 7 stocks on the U.S. market. So anyway, just had to debrief that because somebody's listening to this right now. They're still stuck back on Mag 7. They cut out whenever you said.
Correct. That's the Apple, the NVIDIA, the Microsoft, and so on. But really those two things, right? I mean, there's a whole bunch of other things we can talk on the day trading side. But I mean, the number one thing that carries through for retirees' portfolio is the risk management. We want to make sure that their portfolio is set up to match their risk tolerance. A lot of times we see, retirees come in and they have positions in their portfolio that they really love and they are pretty risky. Maybe we'll see some Bitcoin ETFs. Maybe we'll see those Apple, the NVIDIA, the Microsoft, where we're highly concentrated at the top. But God forbid, one of those companies have bad earnings and we're too concentrated in a singular stock position. We want to make sure that we have diversification, that we can weather the storms. And that's where, and we'll talk about it in further podcasts, but with the 3-bucket method and being able to make sure that we have our safe money, our cash money, but then also not forgetting that we want to keep some in that growth portion as well.
Yeah. So a question without naming the prior firm where you were at, what were some of the similarities and differences between, because I know you did go into an independent wealth management firm, much like us, prior to going full-time day trader before you made your way back to what I believe is the best firm in South Carolina. But If we look at that, what are some of the similarities between what you used to do for a retiree at your old firm, and then what are maybe some things that you feel like are done better here versus, a previous independent firm? Because a lot of people think that, just going independent is going to get you the results that you want. But in reality, the culture of that independent firm is going to drive a lot of those results. So, what are some of the differences that you see there that are going to better serve a retiree or philosophies?
Yeah, like you're saying, there's a lot of similarities, right? Being an RIA, a lot of those guys do kind of a lot of the same things, but it's in the fine details, which really separates big firms, right? So at the last firm, we did do our tax planning, we did our estate planning, we did our holistic planning across the board. But really what separates here is, the tax planning side, the alternative strategies, getting into some of the oil and gas ventures. That's something that, I've never really heard any other firm down in Charleston really talk about. Never really saw clients coming in from other firms have it on their statements either. And just being able to cater to some of those accredited and then even our qualified investors as well is something that really, really does differentiate ourselves. Going back to what I was saying, hey, it takes a village to be able to really cater to a client. Being able to have like a whole team that really does cater towards that client is something that, Big Money Retirement Solutions does very, very well, I will say. But I have to say the number one thing that we do extremely well is our tax strategies. Having someone like Chris, we have two Chris's on the team. We have Chris Franklin. This is our Charleston amazing lead advisor. But then we also have Chris Jennings, and he is our tax strategist up there in Greenville. And what he does is so incredibly impactful for our clients, and being able just to go above and beyond, like, okay, let's do some qualified charitable distributions. Let's do some above the line deductions. But moving into some of the alternative investments is something that really, really does differentiate ourselves.
Yeah, I would say on the tax, and Chris, I'm going to charge you with the same question, but going to the tax side, there's two different ways that you can look at that. A lot of people know that it's in their best interest to create a tax plan, and you either have someone who is me focused, which there's nothing wrong with this. You're going into retirement, you're saying, okay, I need to generate the largest return for myself. I don't want to have to worry about money. My kids are fine. They have a much better upbringing than I had. My family lived on, we work with the generation where a lot of them, their parents have gone through the Great Depression. They lived on cornbread, rice and beans for dinner. So now their kids coming up, right, had steak, meat at every meal. They went to college. So they're like, I need to take care of me. Strategy for them looks totally different than somebody who is legacy driven. But I would say in both, Roth conversions, right? We talk about this all the time, is a bedrock of what we do. And for those clients who have over $1 million, there's ways that we can get creative and go in and actually create offsets around Roth conversions. And it is kind of me focused, right? So, it's focused on driving a return for the retiree. How can we get more income? How can we pay less in taxes? And then on the other side of that coin, we have clients who are very charitably inclined. Like our last podcast we did with Lane. Lane he's a client. He is the head of the Make-A-Wish Greenville. So he serves on that board. But for someone who's charitably focused, doing things like starting a donor advised fund and you throw money into that donor advised fund, you get a large tax deduction. Those are things you can leave that donor advised fund to your kids, and then they have to give that money to charity as they get older. So what a great thing for them to be, let's say the clients they're gone. They've been gone for 30 years and their great grandchild is a part of a private school, and the private school is doing a baseball game or a soccer game for cancer research in Greenville. And this family has a donor advised fund set up by their great grandparents that they say, hey, a platinum sponsorship for this event is $5,000. They don't even blink an eye, and they go in and they give out of that donor advised fund. That's an impact that not only impacts the client, it impacts their family directly and the generations they'll never meet. So, you can do that with the donor advised fund, get the large write-off, and then on the other hand, do a Roth conversion and offset any taxes that they would receive on the money that the family is actually going to use whenever the retiree passes away. So there's so many different directions to take it. But I think tax planning, when done correctly, I used to have a lot of these ideas, but the issue that I continually had was I was like, look, these are ideas from me. Ultimately, I'm not a tax professional. I can't give you tax advice. And I always had great ideas, and I would tell people these, and I'd be like, but you have to run it by your CPA. And I got tired of saying that. And that's why we brought Chris on. Whenever I said, hey, you have to talk to your accountant, I could either call Chris because he's now on payroll, and I could just put him on speaker and be like, hey, this is what I'm thinking. This is the entire situation. I'm sitting there with the client, and he's like, yes, Jonathan, that's it. That's good. Or it's a tax meeting that he's having with them based on all their notes in the system. And I want to hit on one thing from you, Kyle, because I know this was a part of your previous background and it's not going to be moving forward, but you went into an advisory role at your old firm, but you did everything. You met with the client, you created the plan, you onboarded them. So it was basically when they hired you, they were only hiring you. And it would be kind of like, there's a halls down in Charleston, there's a halls up here. But if we went to halls, let's say whenever we're down there in Charleston, us three go out for dinner and our waiter comes by and says, hey, what would you guys like to eat? And we say, hey, we'd like a New York strip. This is how we like it cooked. And then they go missing for 45 minutes and they come back out with our food because they're wearing a chef apron and a chef food. We would be concerned. We'd be like, oh my gosh, these people are understaffed. And yet in the financial world, people hire advisors all the time that don't have a team. And it's like, look, you only have, you could have an advisor that works an 80-hour work week, and that's fine if that's their prerogative. But here's my belief. I like everyone to get it. We all get in the office early. We get in at 7:45. We leave at 5:00 because we want our team to have a life outside of the office. And I think that adds to productivity in the office. But the only way to do that is it does take a village. Like you have to have somebody different for onboarding, paraplanning, tax, operations, there's got to be different sectors of the business, and you have to hire a specialist, right? If that waiter at Halls goes into the back, the steak may get overcooked because they had to go to another table to take their order that we never even saw. And so a lot of people don't see what happens in the background of an advisor's office, but in reality, that's the reason why your trades are taking too long, or, your plan, your name spelled wrong whenever you look at something, is because you've got one person doing a team's job, when if you have the entire team doing it and they're specialists in each role, everything not only gets done in a better manner, it gets done faster, more effective. There's clear accountability and delegation. So I know that was a differentiator from what you had previously experienced. The firm was growing and they're like, hey, Kyle, go and, meet with new clients, bring new clients on. But they were just like, hey, bring the clients on, do the trades, create the plan, onboard them, move their money, which was, it takes away from what you're the best in the world at, which is creating confidence for a retiree and being that face-to-face relationship. So, Chris.
I'll segue. That was a perfect setup because I was thinking of what I wanted to say about what I transitioned from to where I'm at. That was a perfect segue. So thanks for setting that up for me there, Jonathan. But namely, not only would the steak not taste as good, not only is the waiter then overstretched, but there's one seat I want to sit at that table, and it's the seat with the person, the client, the customer. I want to sit there. I want to enjoy the meal. I want to cut into it, see the juices run out, and enjoy that meal together. My previous firm, I have nothing bad. They are an incredible firm, but they have most of their clients out of Charleston, out of South Carolina. It's a nationwide firm. And so I spent a lot of my time on Zoom calls, and hey, God bless Zoom. We're grateful for the cameras. Well, there's something special about sitting down with somebody, shaking a hand, sitting at a table. We're really excited. We got an office going to be opening up there in Charleston. Jonathan can tell you all about it. But the fact that we have a place where we can sit in a chair, shake a hand, and really sit with somebody for some extended time. You're not in a hurry. If you got to go run and do that paperwork and go do 10 other things, that's it. Hey, I'm glad you came in. I got something to do, and you're shooing someone out the door. My whole life has been about people and sitting with nowhere else to go. The person in the room with you is the only person that matters. If you got a steak burning on the stove, your brain is somewhere else. I've actually had that. I'm a terrible cook. Don't come to my house. The fire alarm goes off far too many times. But you want to sit with nowhere else to go. The person in front of you is the only person that matters. That's my passion. That's something that's important to big money. And so, for me, finding a firm that is deeply rooted in South Carolina and now deeply committed to Charleston, was really important to me. And so to have that connection, we're excited. Kyle and we are excited to be in that office at 7:30, say 7:45. We'll be at 7:30 every morning. We'll going through those doors, ready to go, coffee in hand. We love Charleston and we're happy to be here.
Yeah, I love that. Whenever I think about what we're going to do down there, there's so many things that are in place now that weren't in place, 3 years ago. But, one of the rules that we have, piggybacking off what you said, you love to be with the client, you have nowhere to be. One of the rules that we have is I have nowhere to get in this meeting other than to serve this person. Like that's the entire intention. Is when we sit with someone, it's like, we don't have anything to sell them. Do we want them to hire us? Yes, for sure. We're a for-profit organization. I'm not saying that we're not a nonprofit, but the entire ethos of I have nowhere to be other than to serve them. That's the main thing, and I think that so many firms and so many experiences, from what I have seen, is their advisors giving advice. And we can and you can get advice anywhere. But what we tell our lead advisors is we're leaders here to provide leadership. Because at the end of the day, if someone is sitting with us, it means they are not being led well. Like that they're not being shown everything that's possible. They don't have total clarity and confidence around their retirement. And what an opportunity to go into an established place like Charleston, South Carolina, sit with people who across all walks of life. We'll sit with transplants. We'll sit with people who have been there for their entire life. But I'm ready and I'm excited for Big Money Charleston. And I'm more excited for Charleston to dream big. And, the impact that we have there, we're going to scrape the surface. We won't meet everyone, but we will meet a lot of people down in Charleston. And I'm excited for the people that we do meet down in Charleston, the impact that that's going to drive and allow them to dream bigger, think bigger as they go into retirement. Because at the end of the day, big money means big dreams. And we don't believe that you're ever too old to dream. You're going into retirement. They should be your brightest and best years. It shouldn't be, we're scared to death to spend our money. You should sit with someone who enables you. And I'm just excited for all those great conversations that are going to happen on Meeting Street. That is where we are. So, excited to share more about that. But guys, I'm proud of y'all for making the jump. I know that this is for both of you a big life change. But for every lead advisor on the team, they always say, Jonathan, this was like one of my spouse's first, right? But other than that, this is one of the best decisions that I have ever made. And I think looking back a year from now, we'll go back and we'll watch this episode. So, thanks guys. Looking forward to Big Money Charleston, and thanks for listening. Make sure, there are people right now who are listening to this who are not subscribed. So please subscribe to the podcast. Leave us your honest rating and review. Would love to go over those. And I know we got some current clients listening right now too. So leave a review of the podcast. We'll greatly appreciate it.
Also, if you're listening, you're in Greenville and you got friends in Charleston, tell them we're coming.